Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Earth Forum 2023. May I ask everyone to switch your cell phone to silent mode again? Thank you very much. Before we begin, may I first invite the following esteemed speakers on stage for a group photo. Mr. Joseph Chan, JP, Undersecretary for the Financial Services and the Treasury. Mr. Plato Yip, Chairperson of the Friends of the Earth Hong Kong. Mr. Daniel Fong, Vice Chairman of Financial Services Development Council. And Mr. Eric Chan, Chief Public Mission Officer, Hong Kong Cyberport. Thank you. May I ask you to step down on the stage? We'll have another group photo. Come down here. Sorry. Okay, may I also invite the moderators, panelists, and Friends of the Earth Hong Kong board members to join us on stage for a second group photo, please. Everyone. On stage or stage for fine. Thank you, everyone. Please return to your seats. Again, welcome to Earth Forum 2023. I would like to thank our co-organizers, Financial Service Development Council, and all supporting organizations of the event. This forum would not have been possible without your help. We would also like to welcome those who are joining us live on YouTube and on Tencent. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Plato Yip, Chairperson of Friends of the Earth Hong Kong, on stage to give us the officiating speech.
Dear Joseph, Daniel, Eric, distinguished panelists, guests, and online participants, good afternoon. On behalf of the organizers and supporting organizations of Earth Forum 2023, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Tomorrow, we'll celebrate Earth Day, which first began in 1970, the year I was born. It is truly remarkable, though, that this day is now observed in over 190 countries and has mobilized 1 billion individuals to take action towards a better future for our planet. And this year is particularly special for Friends of the Earth Hong Kong as we commemorate our 40th anniversary. I would like to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who helped us, supported us over the past 4 decades, including our members, sponsors, advisors, past and current board members, as well as our dedicated staff here. We're also grateful for the endorsement of Mr. Paul Chen, the Financial Secretary, who has shown his support for Friends of the Earth Hong Kong through this very meaningful apophem. As we mark our 40th anniversary, Friends of the Earth remains committed as Hong Kong's leading environmental advocate and sustainability pathfinder in promoting climate resilience, carbon neutrality, livability, green economy, and sustainable finance. We firmly believe that informed advocacy, research, education, stakeholder dialogue, and community engagement will be key to achieving these goals. Our topic today, empowering sustainable finance, leveraging fintech to examine ESG and combat greenwashing, is of utmost relevance, timely, and importance. Sustainable finance plays a critical role in realizing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but it is vulnerable to greenwashing, which undermines its credibility and hinders progress towards sustainability. To address this issue, we need to enhance transparency, improve data accuracy in promoting green and responsible investments. Emerging technologies such as blockchain, IoT, AI, and machine learning can play a crucial role in achieving these goals by improving ESG reporting transparency and accountability. For instance, blockchain can enable secure and tamper-proof data sharing, and AI can analyze vast amounts of data sets to identify sustainability risks and opportunities. The main objective of our discussion today is to explore how policy and technology can work together to strengthen Hong Kong's position as a leading international green finance center. The financial industry in Hong Kong has been actively developing green finance products and services, such as green loans, green bonds, and green investment funds. By promoting transparency, disclosure, and sustainability in its financial markets, Hong Kong can bolster its reputation as a responsible financial hub, attract more investments from ESG-conscious investors, and contribute to global climate efforts. It is great to see that we have gathered over 200 attendees today, including senior policymakers, regulators, financiers, business executives, researchers, data scientists, ESG and fintech specialists. Friends Today of Hong Kong is fully committed in collaborating with all stakeholders to create a more sustainable future. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Financial Service Development Council for co-organizing this event. And I would also like to thank Cyberport for providing this excellent venue and facilitate event logistics. Finally, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the supporting organizations whose contributions were instrumental in making this event a great success. Your collective efforts have made this event informative, engaging, and impactful. I'm looking forward to a productive and insightful discussion today. And my hope is that after this Earth Forum, you will leave feeling inspired and committed. I urge you also to make a commitment to do your part in creating a sustainable future. I also extend an invitation to all industry experts and professionals to join forces with us and make a positive impact for our planet. Now it is time to act. Thank you once again to everyone who has joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Plato. May I now ask Mr. Daniel Fong, Vice Chairman of Financial Services Development Council, to give us the welcoming speech.
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say how delighted FSDC is to co-host this event with Friends of the Earth, and we'd like to thank, obviously, Plato for his initiative. I think this is the second year we've co-hosted. We look forward to a long and productive collaboration in the years to come. I'd also like to obviously congratulate Plato on his birthday tomorrow, so I understand. And mention that for the past 7 years, I've actually celebrated Earth Day, not in Hong Kong, but in the United States, where I am the vice chair of the American Renewable Energy Institute, and Earth Day started in Dallas, Texas, and now is global. Now, as we celebrate Earth Day, I'd like to put forward two messages briefly for today's forum. One is carbon trading. And I'd like to say that we in Hong Kong stand on the cusp of a revolution, the carbon trading revolution, simply because China has the largest carbon market in the entire world. Now, in 2008, exactly 15 years ago, Tianjin started the first carbon market in China. That was rapidly followed by Beijing in 2009, and later by Shanghai, etc. Today, there are 8 carbon markets operating in China, and it's traded on the SEEE. Now, standards have varied in the way organic development has started in China, and the country wishes to standardize practices and pricing mechanisms, etc. But beyond that, where we come in Hong Kong is that the China carbon market or markets is still domestic. Hong Kong clearly is a global financial center. And the initiative from Beijing is that they hope Hong Kong can pick up the baton to carry the matter forward. This is a matter which FSDC will be looking at very closely in the coming months. Some of you may know that 2 months ago, in February, we published our first report on carbon trading after some 18 months of research. That report has to be updated given the proposals coming from Beijing. And it is hoped and envisaged that in the years to come, we will establish Hong Kong as the largest carbon trading market in the entire world, leveraging off our proximity to China, which is the largest carbon market, and given the special qualities of Hong Kong as an international global financial center, together with our regulatory transparency and, of course, our rule of law and our mature market practices. This is something I very much look forward to. The other matter I wish to mention, again very briefly, really to seed the conversation that will follow in the various panels, is the question of locating our ESG practices, which are fairly well established, within the larger context of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As many of you know, in 2005, the UN kickstarted its Millennial Development Goals, the MDGs. It was superseded 2015 by the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, to which 193 member states of the UN have subscribed. And we hope, the UN hopes to make this a reality, latest by 2030. Hong Kong will play a leading role here. We have started a dialogue with the UN to harmonize those standards, and we hope to locate ESGs, not just as some voluntary standard to which corporations aspire to in Hong Kong, but really as a gold standard to which all of us, whether in the for-profit world or the non-profit world, will strive to establish. So marry ESGs with SDGs, using SDGs as the overarching large tent to which all of us can subscribe, whether for-profit or non-profit. All of us in Hong Kong can be at the forefront of this revolution. I don't wish to take more time now, but I leave you with those two thoughts as areas for rapid exploration expansion as we move forward in Hong Kong, putting Hong Kong at the cutting edge of global development, not just in carbon markets, also in SDGs and ESGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. We're honored to have Mr. Joseph Chan, JP, Undersecretary for the Financial Services and the Treasury of the Government of Hong Kong SAR, with us today to deliver the keynote speech. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Chan.
Plato, Daniel, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me at the Earth Forum again. It is my great pleasure to join Earth Forum 2023, a great platform where distinguished speakers will discuss the latest market trends and future development on combating climate change and sustainable finance. I would like to thank Friends of the Earth and the Financial Services Development Council for organizing today's event, as well as your ongoing efforts in raising awareness about the ESG agenda and its implications for the financial sector. Combating climate change has become a global priority. At COP27 in Egypt last November, world leaders reaffirmed their commitment to combating climate change. In our country, the Central People's Government has set out in the 14th Five-Year Plan to promote comprehensive green transformation of economic and social development, and it endeavors to have carbon dioxide emissions peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. In Hong Kong, we also strive to reduce Hong Kong's carbon emissions by 50% before 2035 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2050. In light of global efforts tackling the challenges from climate change and promoting green transformation, financing is required in a massive scale. It has been estimated that the green financing needs in Asia alone would reach $66 trillion for the next 3 decades, and for mainland China alone, $14.5 trillion. As Asia's leading international financial center, leading across various league tables, including capital markets, insurance, and asset and wealth management business in the region, Hong Kong is well positioned to be the sustainable finance hub of Asia. Over the years, the amount of green and sustainable debts arranged and issued in Hong Kong has been increasing steadily, with local, mainland, and overseas issuers using our sustainable finance platform. In 2022, last year, green and sustainable debts arranged or issued in Hong Kong amounted to $80.5 billion, grown by over 40% from the previous year, topping the league table in Asia. On the asset management side, at the end of last year, the number of authorized ESG funds in Hong Kong grew to 177, an increase of 86% from the previous year. The Hong Kong SAR government will continue to work with our financial regulators and the industry to develop sustainable finance in Hong Kong through a multi-pronged strategy, providing the necessary infrastructure and impetus for market development. Since 2019, we have successfully issued government green bonds under the government green bond program, totaling close to $16 billion equivalent. This includes the largest ESG bond issuance in Asia, totaling $5.75 billion equivalent that were made in January this year. I reckon both of today's panels cover adopting Fintech in sustainable finance. And indeed, we also issued the world's first government tokenized green bond totaling 800 million Hong Kong dollars in February this year as well. These government green bond issuances set an important new benchmark for potential issuers and also enrich the sustainable finance ecosystem in Hong Kong. On promoting the adoption of green financing by enterprises, grants have been approved for over 220 related debt instruments issued in Hong Kong since the launch of the Green and Sustainable Finance Grant Scheme in 2021, involving a total underlying debt issuance of over $70 billion. Furthermore, the launch of Core Climate by the Hong Kong Exchange and Clearing Limited, HKEX, last October for the trading of international voluntary carbon credits signifies a critical step forward in the development of carbon marketplace in Hong Kong. One of today's topic is to combat greenwashing. Following the publication of the Common Ground Taxonomy report by the International Platform on Sustainable Finance, IPSF, the Green and Sustainable Finance Cross-Agency Steering Group will, with the aim of aligning with the Common Ground Taxonomy, work towards proposing the structure and core elements of the local green classification framework for consultation, which shall facilitate easy navigation among the Common Ground Taxonomy, the Mainland's taxonomy, and the EU's taxonomy. On the other hand, earlier this month, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange also published a consultation paper to seek market feedback on proposals to enhance climate-related disclosures under the ESG framework, which proposed to mandate all issuers to make climate-related disclosures in their ESG reports and introduce new climate-related disclosures aligned with the International Sustainability Standards Board ISSB. Acknowledging the readiness of the issuers and their concerns, HKEX proposed interim provisions for certain disclosures for the first 2 reporting years following the effective date of the 1st of January 2024. To drive innovation and expertise in sustainable finance, we must invest in capacity building and education. The government launched in December last year a 3-year pilot green and sustainable finance capacity building support scheme with a total provision of 200 million Hong Kong dollars for application by market practitioners and related professionals, as well as students and graduates of relevant disciplines. After completing eligible programs or accomplishing relevant qualifications, applicants can apply for a subsidy of up to 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, the government will continue to work closely with the industry and relevant stakeholders to develop Hong Kong as a sustainable finance hub in the region, leveraging the enormous opportunities presented by the Greater Bay Area development and the Belt and Road Initiative to serve as a premier financing platform for local, mainland, Asia, and international green projects and enterprises. I invite you all to join us on this journey as we work together to create a greener, brighter, and a more prosperous world for our future generations. I wish you all a rewarding forum today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. I would now like to invite Mr. Eric Chan, Chief Public Mission Officer of Cyberport Hong Kong, to give us the opening speech.
Under-Secretary Mr. Joseph Chen, Plato, Daniel, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I take this chance to welcome you all to Cyberport and a very good afternoon. We are actually delighted and privileged to support the Earth Forum 2023, organized by Financial Services and Development Council and Friends of Earth. Well, this year's forum focuses on leveraging Fintech to examine ESG and combat greenwashing. And as the leading innovation technology hub, Cyberport is committed to use technologies for good and fully supports the development of green and sustainable finance. With the increasing awareness and concern for our environment, the forum is a great opportunity to discuss how Fintech can support sustainable green finance and tackle the problem of greenwashing, with the aim of strengthening Hong Kong's position as the leading green finance center and also a green city. Well, sustainable finance is no longer a buzzword, but a necessity, and it's crucial that we channel our financial resources towards investments that contribute to social and environmental well-being, while also generating long-term financial returns. Hong Kong has been actively promoting green finance and sustainable investment in recent years. And the government, as you have just heard, has already launched various initiatives, including the Green Finance Certification Scheme, to promote green finance development and new regulations to encourage standardized and consistent ESG information disclosure. Nevertheless, the industry is facing the issue of greenwashing, that is, making false or misleading claims about the environmental benefits of a product or a service. It is a significant concern in the financial industry as it undermines investors' confidence in green and sustainable investments and hinders the development of a truly sustainable finance ecosystem. But fintech applications offer solutions in this domain by leveraging on AI and machine learning algorithms to analyze large data sets, including news articles, social media, and financial reports for ESG performance assessment. Investors can make more informed decisions and allocate their resources to companies that are committed to sustainability truly. Moreover, it allows companies to identify areas for improvement and address ESG issues proactively. Blockchain, on the other hand, enables companies to track and verify the authenticity of sustainable and green products and services. For instance, origin of raw materials, carbon footprint of products and services, etc., to increase investors and customer confidence. And as Hong Kong's largest fintech hub, Cyberport now hosts over 400 fintech companies and startups, with a considerable number of startups specializing in green finance, ESG reporting and investment, carbon credit trading, and digital marketplace for responsible sourcing, among others. And as Cyberport enters into our 20th anniversary, we will continue to nurture the growth of our startups and foster digital transformations to enhance on Hong Kong's competitiveness. We are very glad to see that many of our startups have been a driving force in the society to encourage and implement the adoptions of sustainable practices using technology in the finance industry. More will be discussed in the coming panels: how fintech can help examine ESG data and combating greenwashing. And three of our community members, Trillion, Arif, and Pradesh Bay, will unveil how fintech can unlock ESG's commercial value and risk management. And in closing, I believe that this forum provides a unique opportunity to connect our finance and fintech community with regulators, investors, researchers, financial practitioners to discuss the role of technology in promoting sustainable finance, including the challenges of greenwashing in Hong Kong. And we are excited to share insights and ideas on how fintech can help address the challenges of ESG reporting and combat greenwashing, and to learn from the other industry stakeholders on their perspectives and experiences. And lastly, I would like to express my gratitude to FSDC and Friends of Earth for organizing this meaningful event. And a big thank you to all of you attendees for joining us today. And let us work together to leverage fintech in driving sustainable and responsible investment practices, utilizing fintech to help us to achieve a more sustainable future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. This year, we're privileged to have Mr. Eric Solheim, former Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme and Chairman of Trillion International Advisory Committee, as our guest of honor. Let's now play a message from him.
Hello, everyone. Ni hao. It gives me enormous pleasure to be asked to address this incredibly important conference hosted by Friends of the Earth Hong Kong and Hong Kong Financial Services Development Council. I know that there are hundreds of people in the room and even more people watching this on YouTube. Thank you so much for coming to this great event. And I'm also to congratulate Hong Kong Friends of the Earth with the 40 years anniversary. It gives so much hope to see how far the organizations come in these 40 years, and that this now play such a critical role in working to green the Hong Kong financial systems. If you want to discuss how important fintech is for green development, I can think of no better experience than what I had 2 weeks ago in the other Asian giant. That's in India. I was in a poor tribal village in one of the poor states of India, Madhya Pradesh, but everyone in the room, all the farmers, had a mobile phone with a fintech account so that they could get money straight into their account. In the past, of course, nearly all money was stolen on the way by middlemen eating from the pie. Now the farmer gets the money which belongs to him and her, and he or her can decide how to use it. What a progress. But of course, Hong Kong and China is far ahead of India, and indeed far ahead of the entire world when it comes to the use of fintech and financial services in the green development. Hong Kong is a place of immense talent and a core financial hub for the world. The government of Hong Kong has established green bond at an early stage, and the laws and regulations of Hong Kong is now setting the pace for a much wider area. And of course, the position of Hong Kong as part of the Greater Pearl River Delta area, this is really the fastest growing place on planet Earth, giving so much hope to so many people. I'm the 6th and former executive director of the United Nations Environment Programme, and currently I'm working with businesses, governments and organizations all over the planet to create a greener Mother Earth. But I'm particularly proud to be the chairman of the advisory board of Trillion Foundation right here in Hong Kong. And our CEO, Plato Yip, is in the audience today. You can approach him to discuss more. What we do in Trillion is to provide a blockchain high-tech platform for the trading of green assets and for carbon credits. And we're working very, very closely with both the central Chinese government in Beijing, as well as, of course, with Hong Kong authorities. The topic of today is transparency in environment, social and government affairs. And I'm very optimistic. Yes, true, when new systems are established, there will always be some people greenwashing and cheating. That's always happening, both in politics and business. There are always some bad elements trying to utilize the system. But over time, you cannot fool many people. You cannot fool all their own staff, all the shareholders, all the customers. There's no way you can fool all the people over a long time. So this system will come back to credibility very soon. But providing that transparency through civil society groups, through media, and through discussions as in the audience today, is critical to establish a credible system for the future. But I'm absolutely sure we will reach there, and we will reach there soon. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'll be very, very interested in hearing all the outcomes of this important conference. Thank you so much. 谢谢.
And now we enter the main part of the forum. We have invited experts from regulatory bodies, financial institutions, fintech companies, ESG practitioners, and more to discuss how Hong Kong can embrace fintech to support ESG and promote green and sustainable finance. Let us welcome the moderator of the first panel, Mr. Mark Barnkow, Executive Director of the University of Chicago, Francis and Rose Yuen Campus in Hong Kong, together with the following panelists, Mr. Kenneth Hui, Mr. Daniel Fong, Mr. Ben McQuay, Ms. Karen Lam, Ms. Mary Christine Lee to come on stage as well.
I'm going to go ahead and get started while everybody takes their seat this afternoon. My name is Mark Barnico. I'm the Executive Director of the University of Chicago campus here in Hong Kong. But I'm also before I came to Hong Kong, I was the CEO of a clean tech company. I think in today's terms, I would call it a sustainable supply chain company. And it was a difficult road to hoe, being an entrepreneur in this space. We'll talk a little bit about that today with one of our panelists. UChicago is committed to education and research regarding the sustainable climate. And some of the activities that we're doing here on campus include sustainability and climate. It's a new theme for our campus. And we're going to be training more green entrepreneurs as part of the new initiative, the strategic initiative that we have. So I wanted to mention that as one thing. One of the relationships that spurred on this new initiative is our relationship with HKMA. We are a knowledge partner of HKMA in the Alliance for Green Commercial Banks. So we've already had some events with HKMA to educate more people about sustainability and ESG and greening up the climate, but we'll be doing a lot more of that in the future, hopefully bringing in green interns from banks around Hong Kong and the region to train them on how to be more innovative in the work that they're doing. We'll also be doing some work in Indonesia, training young entrepreneurs in Indonesia. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on some of the UChicago activities that we have going on here. But before I forget, I want to thank Plato and the Friends of the Earth for inviting me. I'm very honored to be moderating this illustrious panel today. I am fairly pessimistic, actually, when I look at some of the data. By 2010, we're going to exceed 1.5 degrees. By 2100, we're going to be in the 2.4 to 2.7 degree range in terms of exceeding global warming. This is really concerning to me. We're in a climate crisis now, and I think we all need to be focused on this effort on a daily basis, and this is such a great forum to be able to do this. I am somewhat pleased to hear that and learn that JP Morgan recently committed $2.5 trillion to sustainable development, 1 trillion of which they'll be committing before 2030. That's good news. But at the same time, as we heard earlier, there's more increasing litigation and regulatory enforcement focused on allegations of greenwashing. So we all have to watch out very closely for that. As we have already heard, this is the 53rd anniversary of Earth Day tomorrow. And my role on this panel is incredibly difficult. This is a really complex topic. We have such great panelists here today that we're going to hear from, and I'm going to do my best to try to manage the conversation. What I would ask the panelists to do, and I know that we know some of the acronyms, ESG and so forth, but if you do get into some more deeper acronyms, if you could just explain the acronym or describe the acronym in plain English for the audience, if you use it for the first time. That would be fantastic. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panel, and I'll start from my left with Mr. Kenneth Hui. He's head of the Market Development Division of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. He's in charge of the HKMA's efforts to enhance Hong Kong's competitiveness as an international financial center. I think we have a lot of in-depth conversations for him. Daniel Fung, you've already met, Vice Chairman, Financial Services Development Council. Ben McQuay, he's told me he's one of the longer standing folks in this space since 2016. He's the Vice President of the Hong Kong Green Finance Association and founder of Ben McQuay and Company. Ms. Karen Lam is Structured Finance and Derivatives Partner at Hong Kong SAR Linklaters. And finally, Ms. Marie Christine Lee, she's the founder of Sports for Hope Foundation, and she is one of the fellow entrepreneurs here on the panel that I'm excited to hear from today. So with that brief introduction, let me go ahead and get started and turn the questions over to Kenneth first. You know, there's been so much talk about ESG, sustainability becoming a central issue for businesses and companies and organizations. Is HKMA doing enough? I guess that's my first question for you. What do you think your major accomplishments have been so far as a regulatory body? And then what more can be done?
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and thanks a lot for the invitation today to Plato and also Friends of the Earth. A lot needs to be done. As Mark, you said earlier, there's really quite a big urgency, and also the task is quite wide-ranging and quite huge. The HKMA or the government in general, we're focusing on three key areas to promote green finance and also more generally the greening of Hong Kong's financial system. The first is on supervision, on making sure that we have clear rules and regulation in both risk management as well as disclosure. We can talk about all these areas in more details if we have time today. Second area is on ecosystem building. We spend a lot of time making sure that we have the right talent to do this job, and also to make sure that we have the relevant data, as many of you know, both for risk management as well as for designing new products in finance as in many other areas. We need the right data. And this is a relatively new field, both in terms of what we call physical risk, landslides, typhoon, all these, the damage to Hong Kong's economy as well as the financial system, as well as when it comes to what we call transition risk, which is how companies and corporates, they are transitioning to a more sustainable future and the cost as well as the risk that is involved. The third area is awareness and also participation. Here we're really counting on every one of you, making sure that we all contribute our part in bringing green finance to the broader public. In Hong Kong, we've done quite a few things. Joseph mentioned earlier about the government green bond program is something that we hope to use to raise awareness, not just among institutions, but also among investors, as well as the public actually. Earlier last year, we launched a retail green bond program, hoping to really bring the Hong Kong public on board this important area. So this is kind of broadly what we in the public sector have been doing.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Daniel, I'm going to turn to you. Sometimes I think we get to the point where there, as I said earlier, a lot of acronyms, a lot of language that people don't necessarily understand. What are some of the other limitations of ESG reporting, and how can the limitations of ESG reporting be overcome so that the average business person really understands them, can embrace them, and implement them?
You raise a very good point here, because I think not just in Hong Kong, but globally, we are drowned by jargon, and we are drowned also by statistics, which, valuable though they are and essential as measures for progress or lack of progress, we need to translate all these terms into a language that is accessible and comprehensible by lay people, because without participation from the grassroots, without participation from society at large, we run the risk of speaking in a little echo chamber or an ivory tower, whether in academia or in a think tank, and talking among ourselves. That is not good. So we really need to break out of this sort of specialist paradigm, because ultimately the success or failure of all of these initiatives depends on broad public participation and support. And I think we are very lucky or blessed in Hong Kong that we have a generally very highly educated and aware society. And because we're such a small place, necessarily we become very globalized because we look at international news, for example, so that we're not stuck in a little parochial environment. I think the Nobel laureate Gunnar Myrdal had something to say about this back in the 1950, where he observed that the United States is the most parochial society on earth because it's the most self-sufficient. Now, conversely, we are one of the least self-sufficient places on earth because we have no natural resources. The only resource we have are our people and the talent that they bring to the table. So I think it's very important that the messaging speaks to the general environment as opposed to a specialist audience. I'm foursquare with you behind the push to avoid jargon, like when we talk about global carbon emissions, why do we use an acronym? Why should we do that? Because it's self-evident. And why would we talk about SEEE when we're talking about a Shanghai emissions market and so on? I don't want to take up more time, but I'm foursquare behind you, that the communication and the messaging to the public at large, and more broadly to the world at large, is absolutely critical. When one of our speakers earlier talked about villages in Madhya Pradesh, one of the poorest states in India, being, as it were, Fintech cognizant, that's the audience we should reach.
Right. Oh, I love that comment. Thank you so much for that. Ben, greenwashing. You seem to be our greenwashing expert on the panel, from what I can tell. Maybe you've handled a few greenwashing cases yourself. How can organizations avoid greenwashing in their reporting and or overcome the greenwashing accusation if they've actually been accused of doing it?
Okay, thank you, thank you. You know, that's a huge amount to unpack just there. So let me just try and skim over the surface of some of those themes. Let me just remark, you had asked me if I was a green finance old-timer. And I said, I'm not sure about that, but I definitely feel old sometimes. And so let me just clarify that. So back to greenwashing. Greenwashing in part is to address some of the points that Daniel and you have made about, so there's too much jargon. You know, what do we mean when we talk about environmentally friendly? What do we mean when we talk about recycled, recyclable, good for the planet, net zero, et cetera, et cetera? At this stage, the evolution of greenwashing as we understand it is still very nascent. Greenwashing is a sort of multi-dimensional and evolving problem that affects, in some cases, plagues sort of all financial centers, certainly any financial center that aspires to be a green international financial center. At the same time, there's no universally accepted definition, which of course doesn't help. We tend to categorize greenwashing into sort of two types. One we refer to as claim greenwashing, which is a bit more the obvious, where things are being said, things are being written. And then the other category is executional greenwashing, which is much more sort of nuanced, which is where sort of greenwashing by implication, by the color of the background of an advertisement or the style of design of an advert, for example. So to avoid greenwashing, organizations simply need systems in place. Okay, they need policies and procedures, such as operating procedures, regular training, which is essential. You know, boards and sort of key decision makers, managers, need to be informed and educated with respect to the risks to themselves, of course, and there's a direct relationship between these, between greenwashing risk and directors' duties, and of course risks to the organization. Latest trends and regulatory developments, absolutely critical in an evolving space. So at the core of greenwashing, we have communication. Okay, it's the concept of communication, but it doesn't just impact ESG reporting, it impacts really all communications that companies and financial institutions, of course, make. So it covers marketing, advertising materials, public statements, labels, reps to shareholders, etc. And so in terms of overcoming greenwashing, well, the key thing is to, or rather, transparency is always the best policy. When you're making statements that imply benefits to the environment or performance by reference to environmental and increasingly social metrics, it's very important to be truthful, to be accurate, clear, unambiguous, all very sort of familiar themes, and perhaps most importantly of all, make sure you can substantiate your claims. So some of the most high-profile sort of public naming and shaming in respect of greenwashing, financial institutions, airlines, has been in breach of advertising standards. And on the heart of those, I suppose, enforcement actions has been the inability to substantiate the claim that had been made. Shall I stop there? Because I know that time's ticking, please.
One more point?
Yes, I was just going to say that, you know, the question for most is, well, how do you tackle greenwashing? It's all well and good talking about it, but how do you go about doing it? So the policies and procedures, the systems that I mentioned a moment ago, these can be sort of internally managed and or externally supported, okay? Quantitative disclosures typically are externally verified and assured. Increasingly, particularly as ESG becomes a more regulated environment, then the qualitative, disclosures will also be independently and externally audited. There's, of course, a hugely important role for regulators, There's also a hugely important role for ESG ratings. And of course, organizations should give some thought to how to manage sort of its crisis management in the event of a claim or an allegation of greenwashing against them. And perhaps a very, very final point, because there's a fintech context to all of this. There are all sorts of fintech and technical innovations and solutions to help address, if not solve, a lot of the problems associated with greenwashing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. You've touched on so many things that are of interest to me, and I'm going to turn it over to Karen, but wanted to make a couple points. I've read some ESG reports, large corporate ESG reports, startup ESG reports. I'm embarrassed by what I read because it looks like word salad to me. And there's not enough quantitative. It's always like a footnote at the back of the corporate report. And it seems to me that a lot of firms are, almost using templates to create ESG reports. And I know they're doing it in collaboration with the corporations. But one thing that we were talking about earlier, and in my research, uncovered the number 23 taxonomies that are being used around the world, and every country in Asia has its own taxonomy. Can you talk a little bit about taxonomies, standardization, and the actual reporting requirements, the regulatory and policy frameworks that are out there that can help companies basically comply in a way that's meaningful?
Thanks, Mark. Yes, maybe I'll start with ESG disclosure and reporting first. So I agree that I think given this is such a new thing for many companies, people are grappling with how to compile the data and how to report. But I think we are seeing more standardization and more granularity over time. And I think there are a couple of things worth mentioning here. ESG data that comes from these reporting regimes will help ensure transparency so that investment in sustainable finance can be channeled to areas that will truly help us reach net zero and other ESG targets. And in that sense, Hong Kong authorities have implemented ESG disclosure regimes on certain people already, such as listed issuers, banks, and fund managers. And I know these requirements are being refined over time to match international standards that are being developed. So for example, there's the International Sustainability Standards Board. They are setting international standards on sustainability disclosure, which will be equivalent to the accounting standards such as IFRS, but in the sustainable space. So I think the challenge here is for the Hong Kong regulators to try as much as possible to adhere to international standards, but taking into account the stage where local companies are at, and try to come up with something that is both ambitious but at the same time actionable by companies. And I think we're talking here about, for ISSB, a lot on risk monitoring, ESG risk monitoring, about governance, developing strategies and transition plans to achieve their ESG goals, and very detailed data on their carbon emissions generated by their own business, as well as even their suppliers. And I think at the moment, some of this data is difficult to collect, and maybe fintech is there to assist companies to deal with that challenge. But I think we're certainly seeing a lot of development in this area. The other point I want to touch upon is green loans and green bonds, as well as sustainability linked financial products such as loans, bonds, and derivatives. And here I think what Mark mentioned about taxonomy comes into play. So taxonomy is basically a classification system that tells people or that designates certain areas as green and others as non-green. But the issue is that different countries and jurisdictions are coming up with their own taxonomies. And so there are different standards being applied, and it makes it difficult for investors investing in investments in other countries when the standards don't match. So I think Joseph Chan mentioned the common ground taxonomy taxonomy, which actually is a mapping exercise of the taxonomy between EU and China. And that is a very good starting point, and I know Hong Kong is also looking at that and trying to adopt that as part of its own taxonomy system. And I think having convergence in taxonomies while at the same time, having respect to local differences will help in cross-border finance. And so my firm has worked on a number of green bond issuances over the past few years, and a number of them already now have reference to the common ground taxonomy, so that, for example, green bonds that use proceeds for investment in China can satisfy both the Chinese taxonomy as well as the EU taxonomy where a lot of the investors are based. And I think as today's focus is on fintech, I'd also like to quickly mention the tokenized green bond that I think Mr. Joseph Chan also talked about just now. So our firm also helped with that issuance, and just want to mention that the use of tokenization actually helped shorten the settlement time frame for that bond issuance to 1 day. Which is much shorter than what you would normally see for other bond issuances. So again, this is an area where we think fintech can help to promote green finance. And I think the Hong Kong regulators are also expecting to issue more guidance around tokenized securities later this year. One final point on carbon markets. So I think here at the moment, Hong Kong, again, as mentioned by some other speakers, we've launched the Core Climate Carbon Trading Platform. This is largely a voluntary carbon trading platform at the moment. So Hong Kong doesn't have a lot of regulations around this. However, it does adhere to international best practice, and I think it remains to be seen whether some of the international initiatives are sufficient to ensure that the voluntary carbon credits are of sufficiently high standard, and that carbon offsetting is used in a way that doesn't promote greenwashing, and that really helps companies to satisfy their net zero targets. But I think one thing here that maybe regulators and the government can do is to provide more legal certainty around the legal nature of carbon credits. And so I think a lot of people in the market take the view that carbon credits, voluntary carbon credits should be treated as a kind of intangible property. But unfortunately, in a lot of jurisdictions, including Hong Kong and China, there isn't the definitive legal statement that you would find in case law or legislation that supports this. So I think having that legal certainty will really help to scale up the carbon markets, both in Hong Kong and elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. All right. Marie-Christine Lee, fellow entrepreneur. One thing I would like to say before you get started is, here we are in Cyberport. I don't know how many startups there are in Cyberport. Every one of them should be complying to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Every one of them should have a social impact mission. Every one of them should create that mission statement as they get started. It's so hard to turn the ship when you have a major corporation. And I was so inspired by Marie-Christine when I first talked to her about her Sports for Hope Foundation and her other initiative she's going to talk about today. Turn it over to you, Marie-Christine.
Well, it's going to be a less serious than what I've been talking about.
Let's give you a mic that works.
Right. I mean, in the vibrant city of Hong Kong, we're described as being highly westernized, except with much stronger emphasis on traditional family values, education, and financial successes. However, sports to me, it's just as important. That's why I'm passionate about sports, and I think sports, gives me so much positivity, energy, and discipline, etc. So that's how I got started with my foundation back in 2010. As I grew older, I realized that sports wasn't just a personal passion, it's a way to help others too. So I noticed that many young people here in Hong Kong, especially those underprivileged sector in Hong Kong, they have very little access to sports training, sports facilities, etc. So, and I know how important sports is to them, meaning not just physically, but also with the mental well-being. So that's how I, in 2010, I started, to take action and to try to do something back to the society. And a bit of background why sports, because I'm very, very privileged to have grown in this extremely privileged family with my own tennis court and swimming pool. That's how I got, my passion in sports throughout my childhood. So when I started this foundation called Sports for Hope Foundation back in 2010, I had to make awareness to the society. As we all know, Hong Kong thinks that sports is only secondary to education, rather. So to me, it was a big challenge to educate the public about the importance of sports. Therefore, I did an expedition on the Silk Road, challenging myself on a 500-kilometer, 3-day cycling on the Silk Road. Actually, the exact location was, we started at Sumahana. That was at the border between China and Kyrgyzstan, and then finishing in Kashgar in Xinjiang region. So I rode through, rocky roads, muddy grounds, different terrains, high altitude mountains of 3,000 meters to the desert, experiencing nasty, 4 seasons weather changes. I successfully did it. The whole point was to ultimately demonstrate to the whole of Hong Kong that I wasn't an athlete. As long as you are committed with the perseverance and the teamwork, because I rode with a few other athletes, everyone can succeed. And I completed it in 3 days, and I managed to raise Hong Kong dollars 8 million to kickstart my foundation. And that 8 million, I created a pilot project called the Sports Legacy Scheme, and that was a collaboration with the Hong Kong Olympics Committee, Hong Kong, China. And that was to demonstrate the Olympism behind sports, which helped to build strong minds, discipline, leadership, confidence, sense of belonging, equality, cultural diversity through sports. And the target was to target those financially in need secondary schools, mainly in the northern district of Hong Kong, and those who are the underprivileged children. And a very large portion of them are cross-border students from Shenzhen. And we provide retired athletes to pursue, well, at the same time, the retired athletes, they pursue the passion for sports, the giving back to the school by introducing multi-sports to the children, and also, with sports talents identification. So it was a win-win situation, and the fact that the retired coaches can give back to the society. At the same time, they can develop their career in coaching, and definitely big beneficial for the children as well through this whole program. So as we continue to thrive on this, scheme, I had to organize multiple fundraising programs and awareness in order to expand to other, funding programs. So this part is something very interesting that I'm going to talk about, because with my continuation believing in sports, how important sports is to our society to make life better for everyone. Last year, that was 2022, I wanted to use this foundation as a platform to help, I found an opportunity, let's say, to improve the environment through a recycling initiative called Afterlife, Just as Beautiful. This was about collection and recycling of tennis balls. So, of abandoned tennis balls. Believe it or not, I mean, tennis balls are really abandoned badly throughout the world. I mean, the number is astronomical. It's like 325 million abandoned tennis balls throughout the world. Hong Kong is a small number, but still like about 2 to 3 million abandoned tennis balls.
Would you like to show the video that you brought with you?
Yes, I would like to after I finish my, how I got this started.
Okay.
So this would be the first sports, consumable in sports sector in Hong Kong. So the objective is to raise consciousness of sustainability through various sports games. So with a bit of creativity, I brought in my cousin Douglas, who's the founder of GOD, and then he created a few very interesting furniture pieces out of these abandoned balls. And my son Alistair here, he's sitting there, he created an animated hand-drawn video to basically to explore the philosophy and the motivation behind this whole initiative. So we're going to show that video after I finish off this. So we did a 2-week exhibition on this initiative, and it was extremely successful. We got the awareness out to the society as well as the environmental department, a lot of the private clubs, sports associations, and they were very, very excited about this whole thing. So in February of this year, I was very blessed to receive a 2-year grant from the Hong Kong EPD, Environmental Protection Department, and Hong Kong PC, under a new program called Recycle Your Tennis Balls. So right now, we have designed our own collection bins, and it's all spread out into 50+ locations here in Hong Kong, including majority of the big private recreational clubs, as well as some of the LCSD sites in Hong Kong. So we're going to collect these balls and send them to one of the biggest local recycling company called OFLO, and they're going to break these tennis balls into rubber crumbs and rubber powder, and they will be downcycled into rubberized paving blocks, rubber pads, like the ones that you see in the children's playground, in the government children's playground. And this is very interesting too, also the crumbs will be burned into rubber-derived fuel to be used by this company called Green Island Cement as an alternative fuel for the machines. So this is how I, got involved with the environment now. So now you can see the movie.
Thanks so much. Let's have a look at the movie. fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And also just your perseverance in making all of that happen, Marie-Christine. That's really just a great story. Now, we don't have a lot of time left, but what I'd like to do, I have some questions, and I'm going to start, and whoever wants to take the mic to answer the question, please, raise your hand, we'll pass you a mic. I'm interested in best practices. I'm interested in what governments in Asia have the best practices. I'm interested in, give me a name of a company, corporation, an NGO that you think has best practices and explain why. Who wants to go first?
Could I just artfully avoid that question for a sec? Because I think, Marie, I think you put a very important spotlight on the social aspect of ESG. We talk in Hong Kong, when we're sort of talking ESG, we tend to be mainly talking about climate. And when we talk about sort of green finance, we're talking mainly about sort of high finance products, ways that we can sort of immediately, instantly make money, products and things that are immediately and instantly bankable. Whereas for a lot of the money that we need to move, to have a hope of tackling climate change and dealing with the sort of social issues attributed to climate change, we have to we have to come up with a lot more innovative ways to direct money to more sort of social projects. And so blended capital is something that's massively important that we don't really talk about that much in Hong Kong. You mentioned about the important grant money, and Undersecretary Chan talked earlier a little bit as well about some of the sort of funding schemes the government has. It's really important that we have a clear line of sight as to where those pockets of cash are, so that we encourage more people, more entrepreneurial spirit, who can actually go out there and bring to market their solutions that should be, if it works in Hong Kong, it's going to work elsewhere. And we're really looking at scalability to enhance acceleration. I'll say very, very quickly on best practices. It's such a moving target. It's really hard. And I'm not sure that anyone wants to really name and shame. But I think, Daniel, you mentioned in your opening remarks about sort of gold standards. I think in Hong Kong, we tend to assume that, we take a lead by reference to other key markets, whether it's the EU or the US or UK. And I think in the area of sustainable finance, because there are topics or characteristics that are very unique to Hong Kong in our role as an international financial center in China, that we actually should be and could be a lot more ambitious and actually set standards.
Thank you. Daniel, you want to respond to that? And then I have a question, another question follow on for you.
I think we're on the cusp of a major change here, because whereas obviously we've looked in the past to other references like the EU, like Canada, and so on, for how they've done things, and we recognize there's no need to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. Today, there's a growing recognition that we stand on the cusp of a new synthesis, which, given the way carbon trading has developed in China since 2008, and given the understanding that they need to globalize, internationalize, and use Hong Kong as the springboard for that type of globalization, and given the recognition that you can price carbon credits in RMB as opposed to, let's say, US dollars. And given that there is a huge push to internationalize RMB, and clearly Hong Kong is the leading offshore RMB trading center, and we are in some ways streets ahead of both Singapore and London, and that gap will grow. We solve a number of different problems at the same time. One, how to have a globalized, equitable, transparent, and measurable carbon trading market. Secondly, how to help RMB internationalize so that we don't rely on just one single currency for global trade. This we can do, and the beginning is now. So I think in answer to the question, whether we will keep looking at, as it were, European standards or Canadian standards, let's say, the answer probably is not. We'll be creating our own synthesis. And in that process, we all have a role to play. This is not a top-down thing. This is very much a horizontal process. And the recognition by Beijing that the 8 different carbon trading markets in China are domestic, they are uneven in terms of practices and standards, they want a global market, and Hong Kong is the only game in town. And so really the game is ours to lose. And we have a huge opportunity here to do something truly meaningful and to add value to the global debate on combating climate change.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Ben, Karen, Marie-Christine, you get the last words, okay? Any final thoughts you want to leave us with? We only have a couple minutes left. I'll start with Ben on my left. I'm sorry, not Ben, Kenneth, I'm sorry.
Just riding on your final question about best practice, I think in climate change, we need to kind of really think further about how we see this. When it comes to green finance, it's really based on the real economy, based on how different jurisdictions deal with climate change, deal with their own environmental problem. And because there's such diversity across jurisdiction, different jurisdiction, how they deal with climate change is really, there could be different solution. And as a result, green finance across different jurisdictions can also differ by quite a lot. So I guess my point is that when in the pursuit of best practice, we also need to be mindful about how different jurisdictions could have a legitimate reason to differ. And I think going back to Ben's point about how disclosure is useful, allowing people to make their own judgment, I think that could also be a way out.
Great, thank you. Karen, you're next.
Thank you. Yeah, I would echo what Ken said. And basically, I think after the big bang of the COP26 in Paris, where people set very ambitious goals, I think this year a lot of people are looking at transition, the journey to reaching that goal. And I think every company is starting at a different place, every country is starting at a different place, and the important thing is to look at where we are at and what needs to be done to achieve that. And the pathway to achieving that goal for every company or country or region could be different. But I think the key thing is to have that common goal and to work consistently towards that. And that's why we have these international bodies where we're exchanging best practices, but at the same time, each company and country and region needs to come up with a most suitable plan for itself in reaching that target.
Thanks. Marie-Christine, final inspirational words for people who want to be entrepreneurs and do something great for the planet like you're doing.
Yeah, you just have to be passionate, you have to persist, and believe in it. And I think Hong Kong, we need a lot more education, like in terms of particularly the area of my interest in sports. We need to educate people, on this, and I need more funding. Yeah, so.
So the government could provide more funding for
I
this
hope
kind
they
of
can.
education.
Sure, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barnacal, and all of the panelists for sharing with us your insights. Please return to your seats.
Great, thank you.
Before we proceed to the second panel, we have a special message from, from Dr. Jin Jiang, Director of Institute of Industrial Internet and Internet of Things, China Academy of Information and Communications Technology.
近的香港金融发展局、香港地球之友 地球日论坛的各位领导、嘉宾，大家好！非常感谢论坛组织方的邀请，也非常荣幸能有机会在今天的论坛进行分享。在此，我代表中国信托院于晓辉院长，对香港地球之友成立40周年表示祝贺，对长久以来致力于 ESG 事业的各界人士表达深深的敬意。绿色低碳发展是全球各国的一致共识。中国提出碳达峰、碳中和的重大战略决策，是着力解决资源环境约束突出的问题，实现中华民族永续发展的必然选择，也是构建人类命运共同体的庄严承诺。香港是全球金融中心，国务院2019年发布的《粤港澳大湾区发展规划纲要》明确表示支持香港打造大湾区绿色金融中心，也体现了香港在我国双碳战略中的重要地位。中国信托院作为工业和信息化部直属的科研事业单位，近年来高度关注绿色低碳等相关领域，也在科技赋能低碳发展、双碳园区建设等方向持续推动技术研发、标准制定、产业培育及应用孵化工作。我们也希望能够依托内地的工作基础，为香港打造全球绿色金融中心做出力所能及的贡献。上个星期，我在香港参加了香港 Web3 嘉年华活动，会上向来自于全球的 Web3 生态合作伙伴们正式介绍了由我们发起的区块链基础设施星火链网。借此机会，我也向各位做简要介绍。星火链网是由中国信息通信研究院在工业和信息化部的指导下，利用区块链、DID 等技术构建的面向全球的新型数字基础设施。3年多以来，星火链网致力于推动生态网络的建设和应用发展，形成了在内地的广泛的地域覆盖，已建设完成了8个超级节点，并依托超级节点推动30余个应用骨干节点建设。覆盖行业包括绿色金融、智能制造、农业、能源、医疗、生物制药等。同时，星火链网体系高度重视国际化发展，已建设面向金砖国家的厦门超级节点，面向东盟成员国的柳州超级节点。值得关注的是，马来西亚、澳门国际超级节点已完成签约，并正在建设当中。双碳是星火链网国际化发展的战略级方向。目前我们已经与西门子、SAP、松下、Treelearn 创意等大型跨国企业一道，共同探索区块链等技术在碳足迹追踪、碳资产流转、动力电池诊断等场景下的应用，并为此提供可信任的基础设施服务。我们始终认为，香港是星火链网体系国际化发展的关键。我们由衷希望，也正在推动香港建设星火链网超级节点，为香港的数字经济发展、绿色经济发展建设可信任的数字底座，也为香港实现内地、海外的碳资产可信流转构建基础。我们愿与各位一道，为香港打造国际绿色金融中心共同努力。最后，再次感谢大家为绿色低碳发展做出的贡献，预祝今天的大会取得圆满成功。谢谢。
Next up, we have Mr. Victor Yim, Head of Fintech, Cyberport Hong Kong, to moderate the second panel on how Fintech can help examine ESG data and combat greenwashing. Please welcome Mr. Yim and the following panelists: Ms. Karen Ho, Mr. Arnold Hui, Ms. Simon Ng, Ms. Vivi Hu, Mr. Andre Leung, Mr. Stephen Yu. Please come on stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Cyberport again, and congratulations to Friends of Earth anniversary, and thank you, Plato, Jeff, for organizing the event in Cyberport and having all these distinguished guests to join us, and also honored to be to be the moderator of this panel. I'm Victor Yim, head of Fintech for Cyberport, and for instance, apart from my day job, I'm also doing part-time research in Hong Kong University Computer Science, and doing actually using NLP on ESG disclosure. So really echoing the previous moderator, I learned a lot from his moderation, and also agree no more about the boilerplate and template languages in ESG reports. So I also, the other guests might have left, but I also have the opportunity to be a judge on ESG reports in the TVB award. So I'm also like, because of the research, I also read a whole tons of ESG reports. So so I totally feel that, and in fact, I'm trying to use some model to tackle that problem. Anyway, so without further ado, let me introduce today's panelists. So near me is Mr. Arnold Hui from Hang Seng Index Company. And then we have Stephen Zhu from Portage Bay, our very ESG fintech company here. And then we have Karen Ho from Bloomberg. We have Vivi Hu from Yogivis, who is also ESG fintech company, not yet in Cyberport, but hopefully very soon. And then we have Simon from Trillion, already joined Cyberport, and Andre Learned, every also like emerging into ESG from Red Tech, also a Cyberport company. So really good to continue the discussion from the policymakers and industry experts to the more technical front. So hopefully we will explore something more technical as well as tangible. So I guess since we have so many representatives from the fintech side, one thing I would like to bring up here as a takeaway of this panel will be some of you might or might not have really like heard about or even think about, because even in the title we just use fintech. But what today, the attendee, a lot of them is actually recently called green fintech or ESG fintech, or even some called impact fintech, right? So I think what we can think about, like maybe this panel can also help to answer is, what is the difference between like green fintech versus traditional fintech? I was once, when I asked one of the financial institution to be the panelist for today, which eventually didn't make it. But in fact, I was asked, so what's so special about ESG fintech? Isn't it the same? It's just using the same fintech apply for years. I do believe there is some difference, which I will share probably by the end. But let me first allow our panelists to share their view. And maybe I'll start from Arno, who is sitting next to me. Actually, he used to be also from Cyberport, a fintech firm, but now in a different role. So now in an established company. So would you introduce yourself, as well as let us know about the what opportunity do you see for fintech startup to work with your company, and what kind of solution or capabilities would be particularly valuable?
Thank you, Victor. First of all, very pleasure to be back to Cyberport. Like I remember 6 months ago, I was staying there for something like an incubator program competition, but that time flies. It's good to be back. Maybe I share a bit what Hang Seng Index do about ESG to give some context on why green fintech is relevant to us. Because to many of you, maybe Hang Seng Index is a famous brand, but I guess not many people here know that we launched our first ESG index in 2010. And as of today, guess how many ESG index do we have? Any guess? 20. Yeah, I think to many people it's a big surprise. Wow, we didn't know Hong Kong has so many ESG indexes. But when we need to construct all these indexes, what we need is data. We need a wide range of data. ESG rating, carbon intensity, revenue sources, UNGC compliance, etc. That's why we work a lot together with data providers, third-party independent data providers. Why so? Because we are solely an index provider. We don't own our ESG data because we want to keep an arm's length with the data source to ensure, to avoid the perceived conflict of interest. That's why we work a lot with, like in Hong Kong, we work with HKQAA. We also work overseas with Morningstar. And to some people's surprises, we also work with some startups. Because I guess many financial institutions, they may be hesitate to work with startups because the procurement process will be very painful. And then sometimes their risk or their compliance office will say no, and then the bar is really high. But why Hang Seng Index is willing to work with startups? Because we see the value provided by them to address many challenges in the ESG data areas. As a case in point, we work with Espresso, which also incubated in Cyberport for our recently launched hydrogen index. With Espresso, they provide a SaaS NLP AI solution, which enable us to shortlist 30 equities which are relevant to the hydrogen economy. The power of this system is that it just gives us like one click, and then we can generate covering more than 1,500 documents, published documents, and also some media reports to generate the relevant keywords. And this enabled my team, which we have a really small team. We only have 3-4 people to compile the index within weeks. And then more importantly, I think it's very useful for us to do a very systematic backtesting and also for the further enhancement for future improvement for the algo. On top of this, I think in the future, we can also make use of green fintech for other areas, say blockchain for carbon credit monitoring, or we can use some AI tool to do the social sentiment monitoring, which is very relevant to emerging ESG scandals, because you can't wait for the ESG rating company to give you an assessment on a quarterly basis or annual basis. We need a more timely assessment. But I guess I will leave it to the experts on the panel to elaborate a bit more what they can do to help support this ESG journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Arnold. In fact, I come across this exact sentiment analysis from news, controversial data, and all that. When I first started the research, in fact, it is a company acquired by a bigger data company. Some of you might have heard them. It's called True Value Labs. So instead of using ESG disclosure, it's totally rely on external data, having the belief that company disclosing on their own might not be disclosing the truth. So I think by the fact that they are acquired by a bigger company, say something about their success, and in fact, they are relying on the SASB, now ISSB standard, and I think the previous panelists also talked a lot about standard, and it is really one of the big headaches for ESG analysis and data, which I think, of course, technology is one of the solutions. So I bring to the next panelist, Stephen, from Portage Bay. So again, can you briefly introduce your company, yourself, and also share with us an example how your AI-powered ESG solution have generated new insight using this data and analytics, and how could this capability also leverage to detect the greenwashing or other risk signals?
Okay, sure. First of all, thank you, Friends of the Earth and Plato, for having me here today. Thank you, Cyberport. We're incubated here, so always a pleasure to be at these events, and very grateful for the support of the last couple of years. So I'm Stephen, co-founder and president of Portage Bay. We are based here in Hong Kong. We're an ESG data and analytics company offering our solutions to financial institutions. So maybe to answer your question about a couple of examples, we offer a range of products, and I'll kind of go through and offer a couple of examples and use cases. So on the one hand, we have analytics, benchmarking, portfolio analytics tools, really made simple. So financial institutions, one of the common use cases is for them to understand in a portfolio of securities, can they quickly benchmark and compare to a set of global peers on metrics that are important to them. So for example, it could be implied temperature rise. It could be different emission statistics, really to understand who's doing better or worse on different metrics that are important for them. We also offer clients proprietary models, decarbonization tools. We also have predictive models. So these ones are a little bit more advanced, but perhaps I can just highlight with a brief example. So a client was looking at a large company, a large cap company in the mining space. And so this company has significant initiatives in renewables and green energy, which is obviously a critical piece of its transition strategy. But the client used our tool to really understand very quickly that the historical as well as projected pathway of emissions for this particular company was likely to completely miss its publicly disclosed commitments or targets. And so using this information, obviously it's transparent, there's quantitative data scenario analysis that backs us up. Our client was able to take this information and refine their engagement strategy to really focus on the key issues that mattered the most to them for their investment thesis. So it was done really quickly, so they really value that transparency and really rapid sort of use so that they could get to those insights really quickly. I'll just highlight, we also recently started to pilot some transition success indicators with a select group of clients. And so the business case here is helping clients understand what are the ESG factors that most positively or negatively impact or impact the likely success of a company to transition to a lower carbon future. So what should they focus on when it comes to incorporating ESG into their investment thesis? So this has been really well received, and this is something that we're piloting to really help our clients, which are mostly investors, combat greenwashing and really be more thoughtful about their engagements with clients. So these are just some really quick examples that we currently have using our products.
Thank you, Stephen. So the next guest, not in the orders of the seating plan, but we'll go to Yojivis, who, in my understanding, is also working on like ESG data analysis. So Vivi, would you also introduce your company first, and then maybe tell us about the innovative techniques that your company has developed for these ESG data analysis, as well as some of the new trends for ESG and what technology can be used to follow those trends.
Thank you, Victor. Hi, everyone. It's very pleasure to come here, and thanks for the invite from the Plateau. And it's great to meet a lot of new people here and old friends. And my name is Vivi, founder and CEO for Yojives, a very China-focused ESG data and a climate solution analytic firm. And we founded in 2017 and based in Beijing and Hong Kong. So it's a great question to talking about the new technology applied in the ESG world. Actually, analyzing the ESG behavior and performance associated with Chinese company becomes increasingly important for a lot of global investors, and to address a lot of challenges and those complexity of the Chinese corporates. And we have developed a lot of innovative technologies. First of all is the local NLP, like a natural language processing. It provides us a great way to collect a lot of huge amount of unstructured information from the market. Not really like the like a traditional way or legacy data of ESG ratings, people really rely on the company disclosure. For example, like the CSR report, sustainable report, ESG report. Because of the lacking of standardization, transparency, a lot of time we found out some greenwashing problem related with those company disclosures. To prevent from those issues, a lot of new techniques needs to be used. For example, we can standardize using AI and NLP to help to read, to understand the different sources from the information. For example, news filings, those regulatory filings, and the social medias, NGO reports. So using those ways, we can cross-reference those data from the company disclosures. And also machine learning is definitely a way, and by using machine learning models, we can help analysis those historical trends, and we predict the future performance for those corporates and their peers to predict the potential risk and opportunities. And also, by using those pattern analysis, we can detect on those anomalies for those data. Let's say there's a sudden jump or improvement for those companies' ESG ratings. So those techniques can be used to really cross-reference those performance. And also, a lot of alternative data can be used. For example, satellite data, IoT data. I'll give you an example. For example, we have UGVAS pollutant discharge data. That data coming from the public sources of those remoting sensor for pollutant discharge items for each of the companies which involves in heavy pollution business. We cover more than 400,000 different companies in China. So because of the China government really pay attention on those pollution problems. So there's a lot of like a detection on those real-time intensity of the pollution item, over 500 different items. So it really helps us to prevent those transparency issues because we can read those data to compare those intensity versus the China government standard limit. So this is a very good usage of data to really tell the difference between the company disclosure and the actual behavior. And of course, there are a lot of different types of techniques, including like NLU and natural language understanding. We even use ChatGPT to improve those accuracy of understanding the different Chinese content. So I do believe those technical usage can really help us to prevent those greenwashing problems and have a more robust way to have an overview of the company. In terms of the future trend, we do see like the fiscal risk associated with the climate change is going to be definitely the focus for climate risk assessment from like TCFD. And also UGVAS recently just launched a climate model to help the corporates and asset management firm to detect those physical risk. And according to the central bank from the European, and they really found out those current fiscal risks associated with those portfolios with climate-related business, not including just the high carbon like emission industry, but also for those agriculture and related industry, they really have a very high risk of default for their debts. So there's a survey like the 8% is going to increase for the default comparing with 2020. So a lot of new techniques also can be used for doing the climate risk analysis, for example, satellite data for the location, our local data, for example, from Hong Kong Observatory can really help to increase the resolution of those physical risks. From previously maybe country level, and now we can do province level, and even more detail, we can do
10 meters times 10 meters, like 100 square meters, that grid for detect those, like, for example, in Hong Kong, we have a very serious problem for the tropical cyclone track, the damage, and we can really detect from the historical, more than 1,400 historical track for those actual damage. So by using those techniques, it really can help us to mitigate those potential risks and monitoring the risk. And in the future, we really hope it will benefit all the corporates and financial institutions.
Thank you, Vivi. Yeah, I think it's really good that you bring up these extreme weather, climate risk, physical risk, transition risk issues. So just my personal opinion, like Hong Kong really is a blessed place, whereas we actually have very few extreme weathers, except the typhoon that you might have mentioned. And maybe that also makes us less, have less the feeling about the extreme weathers. So of course, I guess today's forum are those who are definitely care about the Earth, but there's still a lot of people out there still think that this 2-degree natural carbon neutrality is not so imminent and not so close. But I personally have experience this year. So I'm so glad that the border opened up, and I actually went twice to Japan for snowboarding. But what I find out is this year's weather there is really extremely warm. And both 2 trips I went, I'm like snowboarding on melted snow. Even in Hokkaido, which is supposed to be a very cold place. And adding to that is, it's not only the weather is warmer, but actually is more unstable. So they have big snowstorm, and then warm weather, and then big snowstorm, and then warm weather. So I think just some personal feeling that, in fact, when you feel more about that, then you will, this kind of awareness is important for the whole industry to really make things happen, because a lot of people are still not believe in climate change. So our next guest is from Trillian, Simon. So I think that the previous panel and our guest speaker has been like speaking quite a lot about the carbon credit. So I understand like Trillian is really using blockchain to develop the carbon credit market. So could you tell us more about your company, your solution, and how you believe or your approach to really support the voluntary carbon market? Like how a blockchain platform could potentially help to avoid greenwashing.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. And I'm Simone from Trillian. And I'm sure that you all have heard Trillian a few times in this event. And I'll just briefly introduce Trillian before I go on to the blockchain platform. So Trillian is a technology solution provider focusing on blockchain technology, and we do have a global network of carbon trading stakeholders and low carbon new technology ventures. And then our aim is to create an inclusive green finance ecosystem to enhance the bankability and liquidity of carbon assets. And such green assets, to be general, they are quite hard to trade right now because of the standard issues and verification issues. And those assets include carbon credits, of course, and also green energy and other ecological assets. We have been partnering with the CAICT under the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology in China. They have launched the Xinghuo network, which was just mentioned by Jinjiang, and this is the Chinese the national blockchain infrastructure that they are promoting to promote their digitalization in the Chinese industries. So Trillion is currently cooperating with the Chongqing government to build and monitor and operate the green finance backbone node in like on top of the Xinhua network. So as the application part of the blockchain network, we have developed a one-stop shop platform based on blockchain, and it facilitates the identification, capturing, verification, and migration of carbon credits through to carbon exchanges. So the aim is to create a steady, consistent flow of high-value carbon credits through to the carbon exchange and the voluntary carbon market. So basically, what Trillion does is that we have the technological capability to mark a carbon asset from the source. And we have this technology called the Blockchain Identifier Infrastructure, BIF, and also the consensus algorithm. With this technology, we are able to give an ID or an NFT for the carbon assets to be migrated directly to migrated directly on the blockchain. It goes on to third-party verification on the chain, to verification bodies like our partner SGS. They will then verify the carbon credits according to different set of standards in different regions, and it can then go straight to the carbon exchange and carbon market for transaction. So the whole system is fully automated from the beginning of the carbon credit creation, because we can grab it, we can like capture the carbon credit using IoT technology, and then this is fully operated and recorded on the blockchain, which has the characteristic of fully transparent, because it can be all the data among the chain can be accessed and validated by all the parties on the chains. For example, carbon credit creator, buyers, sellers, investors, and even banks and regulators. They can all monitor and validate the data among themselves on the chain in real time. So I think this really does help the carbon exchange to verify and to provide a high quality flow of carbon credits. And it also helps cross-border transaction and to make it more accessible and credible. And I'll stop here and happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. A very exciting and interesting project involving a lot of technology, blockchain, IoT. And since now the previous guests also mentioned, we have, like Hong Kong is now declaring ourselves as the Web3 hub of the world by really opening up the regulation for virtual assets and promoting the usage of Web3 in really bringing our financial services to the next level. And we are also one of the key advocates, and we are also tasked to promote the usage of Web3. So Trillion now is actually a combination of the two most strategic area of what Cyberport is trying to do, like ESG, Fintech, and also Web3. So very exciting. So and then now goes to Andre, my good friend, and also apart from being incubatee, his office is also here, so very convenient for him to join us. So how does your solution, focusing on native character screening, could help with ESG? So explain to us what opportunity exists for you to detect different forms of greenwashing based on your technology.
Thank you, Victor. Thanks, Friends of the Earth, and Hong Kong FSDC for this very, very honored technology specialists here to share all the latest and greatest innovation. First of all, I would like to address the question by going into the fundamental pain points where the global financial services are facing. The reason why I become an entrepreneur, because I used to be working for Refinity, same company as VV. And also I worked in the US for over 10 years doing a programming for software programmer. And what I noticed is that a lot of technologies in dominating the global financial industry has been Western-centric. They focus primarily on English. And so think about if you are building a car, the engine is core, to drive the performance. If you don't have the right engine to drive a better performance, no matter how good it looks like on the body, it still couldn't run fast and efficient. So my technology is like a chipset plugged into RegTech, AML, ESG. Of course, like what mentioned about my company, we're emerging solution. So I don't have a tangible solution at the moment. However, we are building something right now in R&D phase to incorporate our patented technology in terms of the analytics of non-Latin characters, including Chinese, Japanese kanji, etc. And I'm so thankful here also Mary Christine Lee. We are actually co-founding the Sports for Foundation for over 12 years ago. This gave me the social angle of solving the underprivileged in terms of ESG. And now, how do I build up my expertise based on my experience globally is to address the pain point that could be leveraged, not just Hong Kong, but internationally, by having a better analytics on non-Latin characters. So some tangible example would be we are talking to Refinity for potential tech partnership because they couldn't just handle the analytics for Chinese character for AML, RegTech. And now we extend that into ESG, and like what Vivi mentioned, the lack of understanding of Chinese language structure and the culture are core issue of some of the Western-centric dominating companies. They issue the ESG report or analytics based on incomplete data set and analytics because they simply don't have the right analytics for the local language. So how could you fully trust the data? But they have big brands, so that's why they are still dominating the market as trustworthy reporting. However, some of the emerging players across the panel here, and also later on, Albert Lowe will be doing some announcement on ESG scoring. I mean, all these are innovative to come in here to put together like Hang Seng Index company, they're open-minded to work with startup, not just like a big brand, to work together to build something that will form the right ecosystem. And so to really rephrase my company and also my contribution to ESG, so I would like to plug RegTech into ESG, and because at the end of the day, governance within the ESG disclosure, analytics, climate risk is very important. And last but not the least, if you look at the example in the US, the SEC, they actually created a climate and ESG enforcement department. They actually issue fines to BNY Mellon and Mike Gowan as a management company because of the lack of the right process to perform ESG disclosure. On the non-financial side, the Federal Trade Commission in the US also fined Koi and Walmart for some of the non-disclosure incorrect procedures for ESG. So we need to incorporate the international taxonomy, and the regulator have to fine and enforce into the greenwashing. And we, as technology firm here in Hong Kong, we need to provide the right level of data so that regulator can actually issue the fines and enforcement in the right manner, in the manner where it is legitimate, cross-border, but we've got to leverage the technology locally and to be leveraged internationally.
Thank you, Andre. So last but not least, let me pass the time to Karen from Bloomberg. So Karen, like, how's your organization approach to ESG data and insight evolve in the recent years, and what role has technology played in that evolutions? So yeah.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you for having me. So I'm from Bloomberg, so hope you guys know Bloomberg is a financial data and news technology company. Indeed, we actually are the fintech like 40 years ago. At that time, we didn't have a fancy word like AI, NLP at that time. We're more like big data company. So as we evolve over time, now recently we also hear about some development with GPT. We also have a white paper about GPT. So a lot of questions from the customers, but it's hard to actually explain basically. But I'm really happy to have this join this panel. Like the speaker is very passionate about ESG subject itself. I myself also went to the cycle for snowboarding, so I see what you mean. And the cherry blossom comes early this year. So definitely, like very timely topic. As really great to actually share a bit about how our approach are as a company, Bloomberg. So. Instead of like using AI NLP in the beginning, we're trying to make sense of the data first. So we go with the reported data, but a lot of time the quality of data we actually lies on the standards, whether we have the developments of ISSB. So what we do is trying to approach with firstly trying to get the reported data right, standardized, looking through all the different types of like standards, framework, everything else, and try to help users to navigate around different standards and try to pick what they believe they are more material to them, what they think this matters to them. So we also try to do scores. We will later mention about scores, but we're trying to use a framework that is more subject to industry-specific framework, and also on the governance side, trying to understand the different nuances of different countries, like the Asian countries that we need to want to find the ground for companies, compare companies within China should be different measurements with US, for example. So the standardization and comparability, this is something that we're trying to address. And one key thing that I think like the two panels also mentioned, transparency is the best policy, just like what Ben mentioned. That's what we're trying to bring into the customers, that we can trace back to the original documents or source document or news that you actually can understand why is there controversies issues. Why the company claim that they're really good in sustainable finance. So that is something that we want to bring to the table. It's very challenging. When we try to develop some of the NLP or AI, we noticed that the sheer amount of data, and it's very costly to really try to maintain a model, trying to even look at the physical risk, just like Vivi mentioned. So, but we try very hard. We also partner with some of the startups and fintech as well. So we make a partnership with the company called RiskThinking.ai. We'd love to explore any fintech in Hong Kong that we can provide good data of physical risks, and so we can have a discussion after that. So we're trying to provide a lot more granularity and data for clients to do, like even climate risk assessment. One of the initiatives that we do is like using machine learning model to look at carbon estimates, carbon emissions data. Because we just are lucky that we have a sheer amount of financial data, financial statements, all the different ESG data we gathered in the past. So we're trying to find relationship and correlation across those metrics with the emissions, and also by different methodology, bottom-up or top-down approach. We don't have a lot of time to go deep to each models to share about the technical challenges that we may face and how we overcome it. But I guess like as a collectively, as a data providers or technology providers, partners among all the peers here, I think like there's a lot more innovation and technology that we need to invest in, and need a lot of money and time and talent. And hopefully like we give more options for users to decide whether you use more AI, NLP derived data or the reported data. So they have a clear distinction of both and transparency of what are they looking at. Hopefully get better insight in the future.
Thank you, very good sharing, Karen. So I think we only have a few minutes left. So, so first of all, thank you for the panelists. And I think now we have a better understanding on what ESG fintech looks like. So for instance, I came across a pretty good, what we call the green fintech classification, which is actually published last year by the Swiss Green Fintech Network. So it categorized green fintech into 8 categories. So some of those are actually present here, including the ESG data and analytics, the risk analytics and modeling, and also a bit of the green red tag and the green digital asset. So what is missing is green payment. So there's some really interesting use case like in a wallet that allow you to. So in fact, it's one of the use cases from a very very known Alipay. So they have actually an app in China that calculate your carbon footprint in your spending. So and actually give you some incentive if you pick some greener activity or products to purchase. And then we have green investment, of course, more about. I don't think we have that yet in Hong Kong, but also like incorporating the ESG and a sustainable investment strategy for more like the consumer markets to pick from, and then green lending and green crowdfunding. So there's 8 categories, which is I think pretty useful for us to as a blueprint to develop our green fintech community. So I want to ask everyone like a quick question, so we don't have a lot of time. So maybe 30 seconds, one minute. So based on your capacity, what kind of suggestion you would make to policymakers, the governments, or even like NGO, or even to Cyberport, like that could help to develop this green tech, like green fintech community, and eventually supporting Hong Kong to become the green finance hub and carbon trading hub. Like maybe we'll start with Arnold.
We have little time, so actually, to be honest, we need money. So, because now half of the SFC authorized ETF are tracking our indexes, but the AUM is still not large, just like around 7 billion, including the unlisted products. So I think at the end of the day, we need policymakers and also investors to really pour money into the asset so that we have money to pay the startups. And then we also need to incentivize people who are doing good in terms of ESG. So that's my short advice. Thanks.
Very good advice. Stephen?
Sure. Similar to Arnold. So one is funding. So for startups like us, support from that aspect is incredibly helpful. From a regulatory perspective, continued improvements in terms of standards for disclosure, standardization of taxonomies, that's very helpful for our business as well in terms of just being able to put everything together into sort of a more transparent, consistent package for our end users.
Thank you, Stephen. Karen?
I think funding is important, and also hearing today about all the speakers about like some of the local nuances, local region data. I think like we should make the data more transparent in an open platform, or even for international investor to understand the data, the standardized data, the granularity, the expertise that we have here, and try to make sense of data to help to drive more capital in.
Thank you, Karen. Bibi?
I'll make it short. I really wish those policymakers and even Cyberport can give us more room, space, and enable those startups like us to help to build the ecosystem for the green finance, the green world together, because the mission is there, and we are here, and the technology are here.
Thank you. Simone?
Hello. Yeah, I believe that since we have quite a few of the issues that we need to solve, but we also have a lot of technology, as we have said, and we have all the solutions. And I think what we need to do is, because Australia has been making recommendations for Hong Kong to implement the blockchain technologies as it has been in China, and maybe step up a little bit, develop a little bit more faster to catch up with what's already the technology that's already in China. So I think there are many potential institutes like HKEX, FSDCs. They can all cooperate. If they could all cooperate and gives us space to develop, I think there are always more solutions than problems.
Thank you. Andre?
Yes, I learned that from the CEO of Hong Kong MA and EU. In one of the discussions that I heard, is about stress testing. So in the financial services, they have credit risk, operational risk, financial risk. Never really anyone talk about ESG risk stress testing. So when they get to that point, for whoever that tech firm be able to deliver this solution will be top sales globally in this area. So these are the tips and tricks I learned from EDU.
Thank you. So thank you all the panelists, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yim, and all of the panelists. Oh, you're returning to your seats. In celebration of the 40th anniversary of Friends of the Earth, we have launched several flagship initiatives. Let's see. May I invite Professor Carlos Lowe, Board Governor of Friends of the Earth Hong Kong and Director of Center for Business Sustainability at Chinese University of Hong Kong Business School, to introduce the Asia Pacific Corporate Climate Index.
So, honorary guests and friends, and also my fellow governor, friend of the Earth. So good days. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to share with you the Asia Pacific Corporate Climate Index as one of the major initiatives of the Friend of Earth in the days of his 40th anniversary, as a major initiative to enhance its leading advocacy role in environmental sustainability. So, and we hope that we can go beyond a local horizon to adopt an international portfolio. I'm actually have the two place. On one hand, I'm the director of Center for Business Sustainability at the Chinese University. And CBS has a proven record in compiling index to engage company in the journey of business sustainability. So through responsible business. So, and this is the index the Center of Business Sustainability has tried to engage company to do it. Next, please. Yeah, so, and this is the index that complies within this index. So this is why we are good to doing it. Next, please. So how about this corporate climate index positionings? Actually, we hope that we try to inspire and engage company listed in the Asia Pacific to engage in corporate environmental and climate management for achieving business sustainability. I mean, that's the most important part. Yeah. And also to support companies listed in Asia Pacific in enhancing their environmental sustainability and climate regeneration endeavors. So because we will supply them with a report so that they can know their strengths and weaknesses, and on that basis they can improve it. And also we want to provide a benchmark, because every company always consider that they have done a good job, but how good they have done among their peers. So we want to provide an environmental sustainability benchmark for both international and domestic references. And since we combine based on public information, so we encourage companies to be transparent in their climate and environmental disclosure. So most important of all, we try to adopt a more encouraging perspective. We recognize those who have done their best to drive for a sustainability in climate and environmental terms. Finally, we hope that this index can release the environmental and climate value of the business, because today every company try to assert that they have the values in terms of their environmental achievement. Next, please. So this is present a picture how we do it. First of all, it is an annual compilation. We try to do it every year to do it, to compile it. And based on their past year's performance. And also it's a comprehensive assessment from their corporate strategy to their performance. And we have a model, we call it VPI models, value, process, and impact, that sketch the whole process of doing environmental and climate management. So corporate environmental management perspective, we focus on evaluating the management of corporate environmental and climate issues. And open information, as I mentioned, that we rely on open information. I'm very glad that we have so many speakers and how to enhance the reliability of this open data. Actually, we have much to learn from them. Next, please. So this is actually the VPI models. So we start to, the basis for starting this assessment is on their sustainability values, their mission and vision, particularly focus on environment and climate. And then process, how they translate their value into actions. So through organization structure and also their climate and environmental projects. Most important of all, they will produce impact. We assess very much on the achievement. What is the gap between their plan and the result? So in order to prevent greenwashing, I think you need to look at what they have done, isn't it? So in order just not to fall into the trap of their beautiful stories. So I think that's important. And feedback, this is a good mechanism is that we provide this assessment as a feedback so that they know how to improve. So because we all know that sustainability in both environmental and climate terms is an ongoing process. You can't do it once and for all, and there's no frontier. So ongoing improvement is the key for pursuing the unending quest of environmental sustainability. Next, please. So, and as I mentioned, that we have a list of index. So that make us have all the experience to handle it. Actually, this corporate climate index is based on our existing model. Our existing index is a holistic index. We try to single out the environment and climate aspects. You ask me why? Because Friends of Earth is an advocate, a leading advocate in environment and climate terms. So we try to fit their purpose and do our best to achieve this synergy effect. So, next please. Next please. How about the index company? Which are the index company in this Asia Pacific climate index, corporate climate index? We try to cover mostly the leading Asia stock markets. First one is Australia ASX 50 company, index company. And then we have the Strict Times index company, is the stock exchange in Singapore. And then the next one. Next, please. The Hang Seng Index. So these three major index cover most of the leading company in the region. And more important of all, is our first step to try one focusing on the English book, mainly English bookings, stock exchange, so that we can be able to compile a sensible versions. Next, please. So we have a set of questionnaire we just revised. So this actually follow what we have just said, that the VPI model covering the sustainability values, process management, process practice, and impact. So these are the subsections which I won't go into full detail of it. But most important of all, we covered the impact of their activity. So mostly focused on environment and climate change. Yeah. This is the practice. We focus on corporate environmental management, corporate management's capacity building, climate change management, water stewardship program, waste coverage, and action. Actually, although we focus today climate change on decarbonization, but actually, even climate change go beyond just focusing on carbon. It's greenhouse gas and other related issues. They all contribute to climate change. But so this is why environment and climate change is what we would like to focus. Next, please. So this is all other plastics we will cover. Next. So, but as I mentioned that, what differentiates this index from others ESG assessment is that we focus a lot on impacts. So initially, we have this set of impact to consider. First of all, is total number of what condition. Although you can say that this may involve greenwashing practice, but I think this is one of the good indication what they are able to achieve. And then more in substance part is the GHG emissions, percentage of change compared to previous year. I think this is the progress they should develop. And then energy consumptions, change compared to previous reporting years. I think we focus mostly on the progress actually. And then water stewardship. Water is very important too. And waste management, sustainable green buildings certificate achieved, and number of environmental NGOs supported they work with as partners. And finally, any record of non-compliance. I think this is a very important control status. Next, please. Yeah, and we have the assessment scheme, and then each company, we are able to achieve a score for them to record. So how should we understand the score? We have 6 tiers. Tiers below 50 mark, we call it explorer. They just start to look at the issue to do it. And practitioner, and then they are just doing it. And performer, they are begin to achieve to a certain extent level of performance. Achiever is that they have already achieved some quite visible results in terms of their environment and climate change performance. Pace sector, that means they are in a leading role in this sustainability journey. Finally, exemplars is the higher ranking. That means that this company can offer their management practice as a model for all other companies to emulate. I think so. This is the highest score. So, what are the issues we have to consider in the process of launching this corporate climate index when we do it properly in the day we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Fan of the Earth? First of all, we'd like to consider whether we announce all the ranking, top 10, or our current practices, we only allow top 10 ranking, actual ranking. So whether we should cover all the company at their actual ranking. Secondly, how should we organize the launch on one hand, to highlight the achievement of Fan of the Earth, and secondly, to emphasize what we are going to do to enhance the leading role of Fan of the Earth in advocating environmental sustainability. Third is carbon as a focus. We all acknowledge that carbon is a focus at this stage. So should we have a best performance for those companies who achieve the best result among this elite group of companies? So, and also the publicity. How should we publicize this index? From two ways to do it. We, Fan of the Earth, try to work with business company as their partner to go through this sustainability journey, or to continue as a watchdog functions to just pick up to be more critical, to point out their inadequacies. Finally, sponsorship and partnership. We hope that this is not, although this is an initiative of the Fan of the Earth, we hope that we can work with all of our friends and our potential partners, particularly including those who are very good at this data accuracy, and who also want to join us to promote this environmental sustainability with company focus. So actually, Friends of the Earth has a very long history in working with companies to promote environmental sustainability. For example, in the past, the Earth Partner Scheme, isn't it? So we would like to continue that, but we hope that we have a better, more robust instrument to engage company. And on the other hand, we hope we can move to the international arena. This Asia Pacific version is the first step to go beyond Hong Kong. Actually, we hope that eventually we can work with the Center for Business Sustainability to go to the global perspective to make Friends of Earth a more important actors in promoting environmental sustainability and climate resilience. Thank you for your patience to share with me. So hopefully this can be a platform that can be a basis of collaboration for all of us who are looking for a good sustainability journey for not only for business company, but for the government and the society as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Low. Please take your seat. Next, we have Dr. Jeffrey Hung, CEO of Friends of the Earth Hong Kong, and Mr. Albert Low, co-founder of FranceSafe, who will be introducing the Hong Kong personal ESG score. May I now invite Dr. Hung to go on stage first.
So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I trust you all found Professor Low's presentations on the Asia Pacific Corporate Climate Index to be highly informative. So apart from the corporate sector, have you ever considered the ESG principles on a personal level? Actually, personal ESG encompasses the integrations of ESG factors into individuals' decision-making process pertaining to their lifestyle, their investment, and their consumption habits. These include considering the impact of personal actions on both the environment and the society, as well as prioritizing values such as transparency, ethics, biodiversity, and inclusivity in their personal choices. So actually, personal ESG is becoming increasingly important as individuals strive to align their personal values and beliefs with their actions. This is particularly relevant in the context of climate change and global sustainability, where individuals can contribute through their personal choices. So, how can we evaluate an individual's personal ESG performance? So to further our efforts in promoting a healthy and sustainable environment, Friends of the Earth Hong Kong has partnered with FranceSafe to develop Hong Kong's first personal ESG score. This innovative framework empowers individuals to evaluate their personal ESG performance and make more sustainable choices that benefits both the society and the planet. So in the following time, Mr. Albert Low, the co-founder of FranceSafe, will provide an overview of the system. So over to you, Albert. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the introduction from Jeffrey. We have been honored and delighted to work with Friends of Earth on such an interesting project, and yet it's going to bring so much impact to our society. And especially thanks to Jeffrey, Joe, Professor Carlos Low, and Plato, who make it all possible. Let me quickly introduce FranceSafe. Okay, we are one of the 8th SFC licensed 10 rating agencies in Hong Kong, and we are the only local make in Hong Kong rating agencies. And in fact, our ESG journey starts here in Cyberport. We've been researching on a ESG rating framework. We understand there are numerous issues and many implementations issue of having the world more popular ESG ratings over this part of the earth. So we decided we have created a ESG framework, and that is something that we're going to launch this year in June. As for personal ESG, now to make a better world and as a duty, as an Earth citizen, now ESG awareness should be for everyone, for every walk of life. And in order to promote ESG awareness, you need to incentivize it, like many distinguished guests has been sharing in the panel, and we need to make it relevant. enhance their ESG score. Now, yes, imagine if you are more environmental savvy, it's very likely that you're going to have lower utility bills. If you are more social engaged, you're more likely to be a better person. If you have better self-governance, you are likely going to have a better credit profile. Okay? And that translated to your credit risk. In fact, personal ESG score is not new. It has been used in other parts of the world, and it has becoming a mainstream in the banking industry as the first green bond, green mortgage-backed security has been issued in the US about 2 years ago. And it actually gives you a 10 to 15 basis point lower interest rate over the normal conventional market. And that has suddenly changed the world and make ESG score more relevant. People need to be incentivized. Okay? And many has been claiming ESG, personal ESG score, may probably as well become the next most important score as next to your own credit score. Okay, there are many implementations of ESG score in the world. A typical use case would be green credit card. There are banks who have been launching green credit card with the combinations of ESG score as well as credit score. They have been working with an environmental group just like Friends of Earth. Okay, they provide a better credit for the people who have better ESG rating, and they have been turning those credit card reward points into more social awareness activities like planting trees. There are also things like green personal loans, where it incentivizes people who have a better ESG score and give them better credit for purposes like EV purchasing, home improvement, educations, that would eventually improve your own ESG score. In fact, there are more interesting applications. Merrill Lynch has tried to integrate the ESG personal score as well as ESG corporate rating together. Everyone, when they try to click onto the website to invest into certain investment portfolio, they will first check your own ESG score, and then they will try you to identify what's the optimal investment portfolio for you in order to improve your overall investabilities as well as your own ESG ratings. There are numerous applications who's now trying to measure your carbon generating activities, and depending on your own ESG score, it also identified and will recommend you on the right voluntary carbon credit to purchase so that you can offset your own carbon consumption. And there are some countries who are moving a lot quicker. In the UK, UK ERC is actually piloting an exercise which is going to be the foundation to implement something called personal credit allowance. It works like a tax. Okay? So it's like you have certain amount of credit that you can use in a day. If you overspend that credit, you may probably have to pay extra. If you haven't spent all your allowance, you may be able to keep it for some future use. Now, they're all in investigation stage. Now, but then we can see there are going to be more interesting applications and then more interesting implementations, especially for personal ESG world. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into details about the personal ESG score. If you are interested, we are always here. Our Friends of Earth development teams is always here to answer your questions. I just give you an overview of what the personal ESG score is going to look like. It is a 3-dimensional score. We measure E, S, G separately, and we try to integrate it based on the portfolio performances. Now, we use 2 phases approach. Our first phase approach, we basically based on a lot of empirical work, as well as the expertise provided by the Friends of Earth team. We have created sophisticated questions now. We have large sample size from the Friends of Earth network, and we have tried to pick out the most information valuables, the variables which give us the most information values and statistically significant. We also partner with a local credit bureau in order to justify if the score actually works or not. But the first phase of the score is completed. We are now working with banks to try to implement it into actual life. We have a credit engines for them to easily implement the score into their environment. And we are As we are working with the implementation of some of these scores with the banks, we are also trying to partner with them to engage in the second phase of the development, which is something that we're going to aim for. We will hope to create a quantitative, statistically sound score, just very similar to the methodologies that we would normally use for our own credit score. And with that score, we are hoping to bring in credit, spending, and investment historical data into our models. We actually created an APP where it measures and it helps to lock down some of your answers in the questionnaire. We will try to implement such questionnaire or some kind of plugins that were more suitable for the bank's environment into their credit applications process. And lastly, with these statistical models and the day-to-day use of the score, we would hopefully provide the users with advice on better ESG life pattern. Well, in the interest of time, that's what I'll be sharing today. Here is our contact. Hope you find the ESG personal score interesting and looking forward to make a friendly Earth with you together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Low. We now conclude Earth Forum 2023. We're grateful for all of you to be here with us today. Friends of the Earth Hong Kong will continue to work together with stakeholders to promote Hong Kong as an important hub for green and sustainable finance. We welcome and encourage all of you to join us on this carbon-free future. We hope to see you again in future events. Have a great evening.